Rusty's Cool Guitars presents Here for the Gear. Good morning and welcome to Rusty's Cool Guitars Here for the Gear podcast.
Hello.
I'm here with George Sink, and we're going to go over a couple of things that we do when we are playing live guitar. So I guess we'll start with, what are your main guitars for gigging and why do you use them? What'd you choose?
I have an American Elite Telecaster. It's a model by Fender that has been discontinued. It is a model that I wish would not have been discontinued. It's a fantastic guitar. It's just super versatile. I get the twelly, twang, the cluck, that whole thing. And then I also get like a good middle of the road Strat sound. And then if I turn my tone knob down just a little bit, I get kind of a 335 kind of jazz sound. I mean, Ted Green used a Telecaster, so you can do jazz on it. So it's a pretty versatile instrument. And then I have a Lux Tone that I purchased from Rusty's Cool Guitars, and my God, is it the best guitar I've ever played. The neck is amazing, and it's also super versatile. And what's funny, it doesn't have a tone knob, and it's just as good as the other guitar, if not better. So, hey,
Right
shout
on.
out to Rusty's.
Killer, man. Great. So it sounds like you're gigging those tellies pretty hard. So between your telly and your amp, I'm assuming you have a pedal board. What are some staples you rely on, and why did you pick them? What kind of tones are you going for? Are you like someone that uses multi-effects to try to, have different sounds for different songs? Or are you using like individual things and trying to push them?
So really the pedal thing for me, I've accrued quite a bit of pedals over the years, and it's cool because I gig so much I haven't really had time to learn them, which is a problem that a lot of people have. But I run an Ottawa as my first pedal because I don't like rocking my foot back and forth. I have a Keeley compressor, which I really dig. You can boost the sustain, and it's actually really cool how whenever you cut your distortion on, how much longer it lasts because of that. And then I run a low friction volume pedal, which I bought by accident a long time ago, and then just kind of had to just learn it. And I actually really like it. I recommend people checking this out too. And then for my overdrive section, I'll run usually a Wampler. I really, really, really like Wamplers. Right now it's the Dual Fusion by Tom Quell, but before that it was the Paisley, and then before that it was the Hot Rod. And that's usually that section. And then sometimes before all of that, I'll run a whammy pedal or some type of pedal like that does something like that. And then after all of that, I'll run like a Strymon kind of delay. Usually, I got a Timeline from Rusty's too. Shout out to Rusty's again. Fantastic pedal. And before that, I was running a Volante, which is also a Strymon pedal.
Right.
And that's usually my little setup.
Okay, cool. Well, so then you're taking all of that, I'm assuming, to one of your Milkman amps. Am I correct on that?
You're very correct.
So which one of those do you gig the most? The 50 watter, or don't you have the 10 watter too, or am I crazy?
No, actually, you're not crazy. For gigs where I know that I'm not going to have a monitor because the band is one of those bands, it's like, hey man, you're on your own. I run the 50 watt because it's like I need more headroom. And also, I like that amp because if I push it, it's not breaking up early. Versus if I'm running my 10 watt and I'm on my own and I run that to 8, I basically don't need an overdrive pedal. But I gig my 10 watt when it's a smaller room. I gig my 50 watt when it's a bigger room. And then let's say I have a drag and drop gig, which is let's say I have a main thing that I'm playing and
Right.
another one where it's not as important. I'll run usually my amp at that first gig, and then at my second gig I'll drop off that little the amp pedal, also made by Milkman. So that's usually my little setup.
Okay, cool. Well, so I'm assuming, because you're doing this all the time, you probably are really accustomed to your interaction with your amp and your guitars and how they behave depending on, the day, the weather, all that. But I'm a big proponent of using what you have repeatedly, right? Because there's sometimes a revolving door with gear, right, where people go, well, I was chasing this sound, so I got this amp, and now I want to do this sound, so I need this amp. And they never really get to know the nuances of any of those because they're not spending any time with them.
Oh yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
you just spoke from experience that with that little 10 watt amp, when you're maxed out volume wise, it's just pretty much open to warmth and saturation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you do need those higher headroom amps for gigs when you want that cleaner sound at that volume.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing too. You have to play the gear to know that. You're not going to know that if you're always running it at 3 or 4 and never really see what it can do. You know, I don't know why are you using it? Explore it. That's why you have it.
Yeah, and you can't explore it like that at your house. Like, there's this weird safety net that when you play music at your house, that you don't experience your equipment, where there's not that little tinge of, I hope this works, because you're at your house, and like let's say like an amp went out, you have another one.
Right.
Most people they have a practice amp. It's a dedicated, hey, I practice on this.
Right.
And then they have like their gigging amp. And they may have like a couple different versions of what that means. But like even if you play your amp at your house, and let's say you have a house, let's say you have polite neighbors and you can run it loud, it doesn't feel right to run it loud at your house. So like you have to run it loud at gigs, and like if you ever run an amp loud at a gig and you don't like how it sounds, it's like, well then that's not your amp.
Right.
And you didn't even know it because you've been running it at 3 or 4 like you were saying. So it's like, for me, when I first got the Milkman, I experienced that for just a second. I was like, wait a minute. I like the clean a lot, but I don't like how it breaks up. And it's because, like, I had treble at 8 and bass at 10 because I was like, I want to be like the bass player. And had no idea, hey, your tone knob is also in there too. Like, you can use your tone knob to also change your tone and then use the settings on your amp to sculpt it further, or vice versa.
Right.
So, like, I would have never known that if I like cranked my amp to like 8 that I didn't particularly like that sound. And I learned that like a month ago.
Huh.
Because I was playing a wedding and I didn't have a monitor, and I just cranked my amp to 10 and I was like, wow, this sounds like my overdrive pedal.
Yeah. Yeah, but so that's one of the other things though too, the range of an amp, right? So the 5E3 is an amp that I've owned 4 or 5 different versions of that amp, right? 3 of them being made by Michael Clark here in South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
They're great amps, and I used to gig with one in a wedding band because to me that a tweed just before the edge of breakup is a very great, fat, juicy rhythm sound, and it really fills and cuts in a band.
Okay.
You know, now they have really inefficient speakers, you know, and it's only a 12-watt amp, really, supposedly, right? But so it's a 6v6 power section, so I kind of know what that does. When the Headstrong Little King came into my hands a year and a half ago, I kind of knew what that power section was like because I had owned a Car Sportsman before that. Plug those amps are incredible. That's an incredibly voiced amp, but it's 6v6 powered too, right? So there's this overlap of using the same tube for several years where like, and I'd already owned a couple of other amps where I put this in as well. I have acclimated my ears to that sound where when I want a bigger glass sound or like a bigger, higher headroom but like even more guts, the Germinos I have both kind of knock that out because the 5E7 that I have, the Bandmaster, it's 28 watts, 5881s, so it's a bigger glass and it's got a fatter, rounder sound. I don't know how else to describe it. And when it breaks up, oh my goodness, wow! You don't need pedals. They're great if you really want to like set it on fire, but I mean you can just go to a bridge pickup and it'll melt you. But then the other one, the Lead 35, which we have one of those coming into the store pretty soon. They're great, you know, Plexi clones, and that one's got a pair of 5888 ones in it. And I got to play it down at was it Bluffton? I don't know. There's a place down in South Georgia, I think it is, or no, maybe it's Hilton Head. Outside they have Margaritaville, but for like retirees, right?
Okay.
And we were playing. Dude,
about.
they have this huge stage outside, right, with like a covered dome and LED screen behind you and lights and everything. It's full
Wow.
production. You just have to bring your own audio. Well, since we were outside in this huge, like, kind of like shopping center that they built around it, there's, I don't know, 200-300 people out there partying because it's, I think it's around Cinco de Mayo. Anyway, so they're having a good time, and I could open up that amp. So it's got a master volume discreetly hidden in the bottom, but like I actually ran it at like 5 on the bright channel, the dark channel not even turned on. I don't like to jumper it. For me, it's too gainy for what I want to do. But holy crap, to hear that in the voice it was meant to be played in versus what you're talking about playing it at home. Like there's no way in the world I would have ever heard that tone at home. Because you can't open it up that way. You try to, but then you understand the gripe of the person that's not guitar inclined that's like, my God, you're so loud, because it is like, you know, even it's funny, guys, if y'all gals, if you try a 5-watt tube amp, you know, in a small room and you crank it, it's loud, and when it breaks up, it's going to be barking and yelling at you, but it's a great sound. You just have to kind of learn how to tame it and dial it in for what kind of, you know, what you're trying to get out of it.
And I also think, I heard from someone that Joe Walsh did that. I heard he ran a smaller amp so he could turn it all the way up. I don't know if that's true or not, but Joe Walsh is kind of the man and has a great tone. So if that's something that he's doing, I'd like to actually look into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've picked up on, you know, players. I don't think Jimmy Vaughn ever runs his Strat past like 8 on the dial. He like, because he's always got the amp so loud that like that gives you such a fat tone. And then if you really want to overdrive it, you can go to 10, but if you don't have to, you know, there's that.
It's an option. It's not a pedal.
Right.
It's a volume knob.
Yeah.
And that's also something too that's really good to talk about is getting an amp. I heard it's called getting an amp to bloom. And it's really cranking your amp and using your volume knob. And apparently that's what Angus Young did.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me. They didn't have Lamplers.
Yeah.
They didn't have Strymons, man. Like, they didn't have what we have now. So, like, you know, you watch a guy that has a guitar and an amp, and they know how to get those things to communicate and not have a pedal board, and to blow your mind with just that, bro, it's amazing.
Yeah, totally right on. Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes. You learn to hear the voices of the amps so you can use them the way you need. You know, we've got, so speaking of the 6v6 thing, I just want to talk about the Carr line, because I love Steve Carr's amps, right?
Oh, they're fantastic.
So, the Rambler, the Skylark, and the Mercury V we have on the floor all have 6v6 power tubes. But if you sat down and played all three of them back to back to back, they have 3 completely different gain sounds and tones in them. I mean, this Mercury 6 or Mercury V is like crazy. You can get
It's
all sorts
too
of
versatile.
sustain and gain, and and clean. If you need a big, juicy, fat clean,
It does everything. It does your
a
taxes.
beautiful reverb. Yes, I mean it's amazing. And then, but the Sportsman is so warm. It's probably the most room filling and warm sounding amp I've ever played through. That with a Telecaster, oh my lord, the things you can accomplish. It's the only reason I got rid of mine. I had the first generation. I had the opportunity to get a Garage Telecaster that I had wanted. I really liked Don Garage's take on the Telecaster. He kind of made the lower horn a little pointy, did a belly cut on it. And, you know, it's just very comfortable. It's one thing of binding on the top, and a classic 2-tone burst. I like it.
Nice.
So I traded my amp away for that guitar here at Rusty's Guitars, Cool Guitars, before it was owned by current administration.
Oh.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That is crazy.
Anyway, but let me get back to the Skylark. That's the last one I didn't talk about with the Carr line. That is a very, like, I don't know, a wide berth amp. It can do a lot of things. And it's actually, I think, the smallest wattage of the 3 amps, the way that he's got a voice.
Really?
Only 12, yeah. But the thing with all these amps is we talked about volume and rooms, and you and I both know, playing all these small rooms in Charleston, you don't always have to have a big amp to get over. You can let the PA do the lifting if it's you've got good sound reinforcement.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to bring the.
Yeah, you don't need
you don't need to bring the Marshall full stack to a room in Charleston, because believe me, that's entirely too much. And also the hernia that you're going to give yourself from having
Especially
to carry
because
it.
it's probably going to be carrying up the stairs or walking down the street, because parking's so bad everywhere.
So you're walking 100 pounds of gear to play a show. That, like, I mean, it may be a great show, but like, there's no need for that. If you're playing the Windjammer, yeah, bring your stuff.
Charleston Music Hall, maybe, like
Charleston Music Hall, like AB and amp.
Yeah.
You know, completely understandable. Everything's taken care of. There are tarps. Everything's, you know,
well, so
rain ready.
Yeah, I want to circle back to you were talking about using your Milkman the amp.
Yeah.
So to me, that is an ampless solution, right?
Mhm.
And you know, Rusty's is getting in the game doing that, between the NuX pedals that have, you know, XLR outs, plus all the like scenes you can store on there. You know, you could program that so if you're doing a wedding cover band gig, you know, hey, here's song 1, here's song 2, song 3. and not have to carry a bevy
Nice.
of other pedals, right? I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Nice. I might be making a purchase today.
Yeah, you can put that MIDI in it too, so if you have programming on your computer, you can do all that with it, which is really cool. But then we just added the two-note torpedoes and Captor X to the lineup, so those are these really cool amp attenuators and speaker simulators, right? So you take your, like if we took that head for the Bad Cat Lynx and we took the speaker out of that, we can run it right into that unit, and on the back side we can take that out at an XLR line level straight into my recording software in the computer and have any number of virtual microphones and speakers combinations to explore. Now here's where that's really practical. Let's say I want to take my big head out to a show and use it, but there's a volume constraint. That will allow you to run it through the load. That'll take the load of that amp, even though you don't have a speaker. But then you take that line level, put it in front of house, they put it in your monitor, boom, you're done. You didn't have to do anything much. Right?
Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, you drop a pedal, and that's your rig. You know how cool it is to like play a gig, and especially like a wedding, and watch the singer take their mic off the stand, and then leave. Yeah, you can do that. You can just take an XLR out of the back of that pedal, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
No board. That is the board.
Yeah.
Because you can literally like preset everything and like save those presets as scenes, and then from set to set, from song to song, and be like, all right, this particular tune has this kind of distortion. Cool, let me do that. Later in the tune, let me hit preset 2, which is like a specific delay on the solo that you have to have. Like you can
Right.
get that specific with things.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. If you have the
It's
time,
awesome.
time and inclination, you can do almost anything. So then the other amplify solutions. So we also picked up. We have Seymour Duncan power stages these days. Where those come in handy is like, let's say that you're playing outside the neutral beach stage there at the Windjammel,
Okay.
right? And you were going to play through your Milkman, but you needed more power because you wanted to have a 212 cabinet behind you driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Power Stage 200 there on the right, if you plug into that, you get a 100-watt stereo to each side for whatever you want to hook up cabinet-wise, from 4 to 16 ohms. So you can put a 212 cabinet behind you, have that power it, and it's just clean Class D power to give you a high headroom amp simulator. And you can take the XLR out of that, take that into the house, put it in your monitor, put it in front of house, wherever you want, and you're getting the same effect as having an amp in the room. Some people like those for, like if you're using a DSM Humboldt simplifier, something like that, or Fractal, and you want the amp in the room kind of thing, then you're powering that into
Oh.
because the guitar cabinet sounds different than a modeled guitar sound. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what you're trying to emulate there, is having that. Which
So they're getting closer to getting.
to sounding like an amplifier, like you and I carry in a
okay,
package,
but
so
you have to make an addendum to the process
Yes.
with a power stage.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just another way of skinning that cat, right?
Yeah,
So-
it's funny. When I met Guthrie, Guthrie was talking about how they gave him the latest Axe Effects because he's the FM9 because he's the man.
Right.
But he was talking about how like he didn't like that there wasn't something behind him, and
Right.
he said for a while the training wheels was like having a monitor behind him. It wasn't super loud because it didn't need to be, but just the fact that he had like an amp,
Yeah, and it felt like you have something.
it felt like you
behind
had something. He's like, I needed the air moved behind me.
Yeah, that's
I
why
needed-
he
I needed
uses
that
those
feeling.
Laney FRs now. So if you've seen those, Laney is making powered full response, I believe, speakers, what they're called, and they're supposed to be very good and neutral, right? Because that's what you want when it's recreating sound. So it's pretty much like a studio monitor, 2 degree for live sound. But
Mhm.
he has that behind him now, so he can feel what he's playing. We're used to that. I don't know if you call it the air behind you moving or just the vibration, whatever. The presence
yeah.
of playing an amp.
It's
is-
just the presence, really.
because when even when I go in ears, like it's neutering to not feel the compression of the amp against you while you're playing and digging.
Yeah.
I-
Like that. People complain, but man, that little hiss means it's real.
Yeah.
Like when I hear that little hiss when I'm playing, I'm like, that means it's electric.
Yeah.
Like, should it happen? No, but it's like when you watch John Mayer, especially like whenever he was playing with like his trio or something, he cuts on whatever version of that tube screamer it is that he has that people talk about. You hear, and then he solos, and then the solo is louder than the hiss.
Yeah.
That just makes it real.
And it sounds good. There you go. I mean, that's kind of the game. But all right, so small. Let's go back to the small amps.
Yeah.
So like that Space Tone right there. If you have the right band, you can play a 5-watt tube amp and get away with it. If you have a Keith Moon, John Bonham wannabe in a trio or quartet, you don't really want that because you're gonna unless you're playing
you're gonna get lost.
Unless you're playing Chicago blues, or Texas gritty blues, something like that, and you just want that crank tweed tone. That's when you do that. But I mean, there is no headroom in a small amp.
No.
Unless they're voiced right. When you start getting into like we were talking about the Car Skylark, the Merc V, and the Sportsman, all three of those have a very big, fat, clean headroom if you want it. And then you can hit it with pedals and do whatever, or you can set it where it's, almost crunchy, and put a comp pedal like you like to do in front of it, and there you go, all day.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the Space Tone. That's a Sword, right?
That's right.
I'm fairly certain Charlie Kendall in Charleston, South Carolina plays one of those.
Right on.
And I'm pretty sure he got it from here.
Nice.
And he loves it.
Yeah.
And I'm always jealous when he brings it because I'm like, man, I have a Milkman, but I don't have a Sword.
Yeah, the Swords sound really good. The reverb in them, I think, is to die for.
Oh yeah. The effects that they put into their amps are just. I thought the Milkman had the best reverb I ever heard because it just sounded like that, I call it like a drip.
Right.
Where just you hit a note and it just like rings out forever and then just kind of like slowly repeats and then comes back. Like you could almost use it as a delay.
Yeah.
Something I've been getting away with for years because I'm lazy and I buy delay pedals and don't know how to use them because I don't read instruction manuals. Ladies and gentlemen, read instruction manuals. I don't care how big they are. But to circle back, every time I hear him play that Sword, it's just like, man, that even the tremolo. They're known for tremolo, right?
Yeah.
Their tremolo just sounds just so much better.
They
invest a lot of time into
variant
it.
tremolo where it actually alters the bias of the power tubes.
Oh,
so that
wow.
it causes a nice pulsating wave type thing to happen.
So it's like more organic.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Like a whole food version of.
Yes, yes. So in that same category would be, and this amp is really really cool. Maybe we need to go talk to Wayne about this. Because he does make the Wayne at Headstrong Amplifiers makes the SC5, right, which is a 5-watt amp. You can put either a single 6V6 tube in it or 6L6 power tube, or 34 believe if you want to. You just have to or you don't even have to rebias it. Excuse me. And you can change up the rectifier between a 5x3, which is like old school Champ type sounds, or power wise, or you can put in a GZ34, which will up it. So you get the higher headroom. That's really kind of at the end of the day. That all that tube talk is just low headroom, high headroom. But anyway, he makes this where it has a full tone stack, right? So it's a volume, treble, mid, bass, and reverb in a 112 combo. I think it'd be killer if you put tremolo on it too and did that. But he does that in the form of the Headstrong Little King, which is dual 6v6, the one I was talking about. I've been gigging the past.
Oh yeah, you talk about that one a lot.
Dude, well, I play it a lot, right? Like, and it's so amazing a piece of gear. I'm gonna gush on it here on the podcast because I think it needs to be documented. A couple weeks ago, I had a gig at Reds over here in Mount Pleasant, right?
Yeah.
With my buddy Dave Landio. So back up my car to unload, and when I opened the hatch, my Little King inside of its Tukey cover jumps right out onto the concrete, face plants. As soon as I opened the hatch, I mean, I didn't have time to react, and it's on the ground. And I was like, oh my God, I have to play in an hour. I hope this amp is working. Please, my God, please. Anyway, so I unload my stuff, put it in there, go find a parking spot, pay for that obnoxiousness. And I get in there, I take the cover off, everything looks good on the face of the amp, plug it in, turn it on, play it. Full show.
It's fine.
It's perfectly fine.
It's
like
fine.
It was like, dude, what are you sweating over? So yeah, that's a great amp though, and it's I do so much with it, David. I can do a gig without pedals with it if I wanted to, but it does have to be at like 8, 9 town, or 7 with humbuckers, and you can really get it to sing. But like I've done in the past 3 weeks, I've done hip hop gigs with it. Corporate gigs. I have a gig today. I'm playing it for solo instrumental music for an event downtown. That's why I'm dressed in all black. and let's see, I did a jazz piccolo with it, piccolo spletto with the jazz trio.
Nice.
Yeah.
So super versatile.
It's incredibly versatile. The only limit is your imagination, like whatever pedals you want to put on it, because it's such a great pedal platform.
And what you just said is the truth with everything. The only limit is your imagination.
Yeah.
You can make any amp sound like anything when you spend enough time twisting knobs, man.
Yeah, and putting it through the gig paces, because once you do that,
you'll learn what it's actually capable of
yes,
at a gig.
Yeah, and that's where, like, so this may sound like, whoa, first world problem, and it probably is. Having a multitude of amps to choose from at your house, guilty. It's hard because I want to learn how to play them all, but I don't always have the formats for it, or the. So case in point, Friday night playing a gig of a common house, right, with High Society. I love playing that gig with the Marshall clone Germina, or the B35 that I have, right? Like that's
because you're outside, right?
Yeah. But the problem is I'm also bringing full PA for the band, including a sub. So like, I'm going to defer to either my 210 cabinet with a head on it, or I'm going to go play, because that thing weighs like 20 pounds. It's super light. Or take the Headstrong, because it's small footprint, easy for me to mic up, and I can let the PA do all the lifting, and I don't have to be. We're outside, you know. There's
and see that's something too. Is like, I'm not promoting you're having a multitude of amps, but also I am, because it's like in certain situations, if you have too big of an amp, it's to your detriment.
It is, because you know
same with a small amp.
But we talk about feel when we're playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the feel we're getting from the amplifier, because that really influences how we interact with the other musicians, because that's
Absolutely.
our voice, right? Like if our voice is not where we think it needs to be, we're not going to be focused on playing our best, because it doesn't, that creative door is
because we're in our head.
Yes.
We're like, oh, I don't quite like my tone. What's going on with that?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's because you can't turn up louder.
So that's where, using this and knowing your limitations and what you're capable of, I know I can get a great sound at 3.5 on that Little King with any pedal board I put in front of it. And I even heavy, like, face melting lead tones with delay and all that. I can do all that and let the mic catch it, and it's not going to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? That's a lot of fun. I'm going to go back to this DSM Simplifier. Reach out to them. We're hoping to hear back from them, because we'd like to bring them in for everybody out there in Rusty's land. And I ran mine at the end of my pedal board as my insurance policy. Should that amp have not worked that night, I already had it on my end of my board. So it's the size of a pedal. I can run stereo XLR out of that to the house if I wanted to, and have stereo effects, because I got this return on it. That's how they built that in there. It's got built-in reverb, so you don't have to worry about having a reverb pedal on your board if you didn't have it. And it takes effects into it very well. So I have done gigs with that, with the first iteration of my jazz trio a couple years ago, where we were inside you've been to Palmetto Brewing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so inside there with a live 3-piece, like everybody went direct. The drummer brought an electric kit with like electric cymbals, and I don't know, the volume was great, because we ran straight into the PA, and nobody was cranking to be louder. Whereas sometimes outside there, it can get a little raucous.
Oh yeah, it can get loud.
Yeah.
You can bring the ruckus for sure.
All of the hard stuff is bouncing back at you. But so that kind of that covers a bunch of the amps we have and a bunch of the guitars we have. By the time this comes out, it'll hopefully be before June 30th, which is when our sale ends on Bad Cats. If you buy a Bad Cat from us, a head or an amplifier, it's $150 off from Bad Cat. So these amps are already pretty insanely affordable for the tech that's in them.
Yeah, and I just recommend just coming to try one out.
Yeah, they're awesome.
If you're like, hesitant because you're like, well, it's Rusty's, and Rusty's has nice stuff and some of it is expensive, that doesn't mean everything isn't affordable. And also, when you try an amp out, make sure to try it the way that you would want to play things. Like, don't just like rip an A minor pentatonic because you're like, well, this is my go-to. Like, play a song that needs a certain tone, and if you can't find it out of that amp, then that's not your amp.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Really, try something that you want to try. I feel like we've all went into Guitar Center. I'm very guilty, and just found, here's the $3,000 or the $4,000 John Petrucci, his signature guitar. Let me find an orange. Let me put it through and just go to town on some arpeggios. That's really cool, but that's not what I do at gigs. So what I do is I grab a guitar and then I play Isn't She Lovely, and if it sounds good, then I start messing around. I'm like, all right, can I get a John Mayer? Can I get a Guthrie Govan? without pedals. Like I start testing that kind of stuff. So just come test out an amp. They have really good amps. They have a room where you can shut the door and people won't bother you. And if they see you in your testing, they have no problem at all, like just letting you do your own thing. And also they're just super friendly people where like if you want to play guitar, it's not this whole thing. It's like maybe the first time you come in, ask if you can play something. But like once they see that you've come in before, it's just an understanding, just, etiquette. Amp testing etiquette. Just understand that not everybody wants to hear what you're playing. And also be loud enough to hear it, but also not loud enough to the person in there trying to sell other stuff, Don't be so loud they can't hear that person.
So local folks here to Charleston, just so you know, we do rent our Supro amplifiers and Laney amplifiers. If you guys are interested in trying them out.
I am interested in trying them out.
Very affordable rental prices for a week. Also, if you have people coming in town, all of our listeners from far away, when you come in town, you can rent an acoustic guitar from us, so a whole acoustic rig if you need it and you want a gig. We also have electric guitars and amps and combos that you can rent to take for the week while you're in town, so you don't have to bring yours down.
So if you rent one of these amps, these Supros that you're talking about, because I might be interested, might not.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you put on top of it to make sure that it's like, do you have like a cover or something, or is it just
no, we
straight
understand.
up amp?
It's just here's the amp,
Okay, so ladies and
we
gentlemen,
also rent pedals locally. So if you're interested,
you rent pedals
in that,
too.
yeah, I
Wow.
mean we can do a week or a month at a time. We have good prices for both of those. But yeah, we're doing those. Man, we're trying to get that in often to get people come in here to do that. Besides lessons, we offer lessons as well, and services and setups. We do that, David. We've gone through a bunch of guitars recently, setting them up and restringing them, and
Yep, super fast
working on
turnaround.
electronics. Those kind of
If you're a
things.
musician, super fast turnaround. If you're a hobbyist and you come in and you're like, hey, I want to drop this off, and it doesn't matter when you fix it, then that's going to ring true. But if you're a cat that's out there hitting it and grinding your teeth, he's for sure going to be like, all right, cool, let's put this first and let's go ahead and knock this out because this guy's gigging.
Yeah, we'd like to.
Which is really cool that he does that.
Like to help all the musicians out here, because we know how hard it is out there doing that. Get you in and out, back playing music. But all right, so that kind of addressed everything I wanted to talk about today, David. Like we talked about playing live, like what your gear is, what amps you're using, and pedals, and I do know when you're carrying a lot of things to and fro, you use mono gig bags like we carry here at
Yes,
Rusty
I do.
School Guitars.
I'd recommend everybody have one.
Yeah,
And all their iterations. And just to let you know that tick, that maybe people are like, oh, what's that?
Yeah.
Okay, what that is that something that you can put on the front of your guitar where you have all of your quarter inches and all of your XLRs and all of your microphones already in one place every single time. And the bag is extremely resilient. And also, the reason why I bought the mono bag is sometimes I play these cool outside foley gigs where, they say that like foley bubble thing, it likes to bust in the middle of a gig.
Right.
So if that happens, I put my Milkman amp pedal, which fits perfectly in that bag with all of its accompanying cords. I put my guitar in the bag and I just let it get rained on because it doesn't hurt it at all. It's like military grade material. It's really crazy.
Yeah, they're
Super
very well
resilient.
built, man. I've flown with them. I've used them. I highly endorse them. We also have all the pedal train stuff you guys could ever need. If you need, pedal board build outs, we can do that for you. We do restring subscription services as well. So, all right, David, thanks for hanging out with me this morning. It's really great to talk gear with you.
Yeah, man, it was
Let's
fun.
do this again soon. And,
Yeah, let's do it.
Everybody, don't forget to check out our YouTube pages, Rusty's Cool Garage and Rusty's Cool Guitars. And then our website, rustyscoolguitars.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for all the best and latest content and new merch that we have in the store. So
Check it out.
dude, we have some new t-shirts coming in, but stay.
I'll have to get one.
Yeah, to be continued. Rusty's Cool Guitars presents Here for the Gear.